Texas is 5-1 overall and 2-1 in Big 12 play coming out of the bye week. But how are the rest of the teams left on the docket for the Longhorns faring so far this year? That's what we'll talk about today here on the Horns 24/7 YouTube channel. Thanks so much for joining us. Let's go ahead and start with the first team that they'll play out of the break in the Houston Cougars. They picked up their first conference victory on Thursday night in thrilling fashion with a Hail Mary over West Virginia. Absolutely phenomenal game and an incredible finish for the Cougars. They moved to 3-3 overall and 1-2 in conference play. So we mentioned the enthralling first win as members of the Big 12 Conference. Donovan Smith, the transfer quarterback from Texas Tech that Longhorn fans certainly don't want to remember from that upset victory for the Red Raiders last year over Texas, has started off the season slow, but really turned it up the last three games, throwing for 882 yards, 9 touchdowns, and no interceptions during that stretch. The Cougars are 110th in the country in total defense. This is a chance for the Longhorns to come out of the break and really make a statement offensively and try to rebound after a week of rest and getting healthy as well. So after the Cougars, they come back to Austin and will host BYU, so a little bit of a homecoming for Steve Sarkisian, who was the quarterback for the Cougars back during his playing days. 4-2 overall, 1-2 in conference play. They lost 44-11 to TCU on Saturday. They let redshirt freshman Josh Hoover making his first start throw for 439 yards and 4 touchdowns against their defense. But the defense isn't all of the struggles. Offensively, 121st in total offense amongst all FBS teams. They've really struggled to find their footing there. Keaton Slovis, the transfer quarterback, has been under 60% completion percentage. He was under 50% on Saturday. And over the last 4 games, they threw 2 picks against Kansas and then threw 1 against TCU on Saturday. Good for the Longhorns to get BYU in Austin, as Provo, Utah is a very difficult place to play. But nonetheless, this is a team that is struggling with the transition to a new conference, and Texas should take advantage of that when BYU comes into town. Up next, they will host Kansas State the week after that. The Wildcats 4-2 overall, 2-1 in conference play. Losses coming to Missouri and Oklahoma State. That Oklahoma State loss at first was kind of eyebrow raising, but the Cowboys have been playing really well as of late. So that looks less bad per se. Nonetheless, they beat Texas Tech 38-21 on Saturday. Pretty convincing fashion. Will Howard, though, has really been struggling. 7 interceptions to go with 9 touchdowns this season. He threw 3 interceptions against Oklahoma State in that loss and has at least 1 interception in every game that he's played, with exception to the Texas Tech game on Saturday, because he only threw 9 passes. And then in comes the freshman quarterback, Avery Johnson, for the entire second half, because Chris Kleeman said after the game that Texas Tech was just handing them the quarterback run game, which they took full advantage of. The freshman comes in and scores 5 touchdowns on the ground, which is his specialty, and led them to a victory. So now going forward, the question for Kansas State is Avery Johnson the starter over Will Johnson? We'll have to find out next week when they play TCU. But defensively, they lost one of their best players in the season in their linebacker Daniel Green, but the unit's still able to cause 3 turnovers through the air against the Red Raiders, with Kobe Savage coming down with 2 interceptions. As I mentioned, they will take on TCU next. And speaking of the Horned Frogs, the Longhorns will travel to Fort Worth after the battle with Kansas State. TCU 4-3 overall, 2-2 in conference play. They had that week 1 loss to Colorado, lost the last 2 games against West Virginia and Iowa State before blowing out BYU 44-11 on Saturday. We knew that this was going to be a bit of a recession year for Sonny Dykes and TCU after the national championship appearance last year, losing so much talent to the NFL. It kind of has been just that, but they bounced back yesterday. Chandler Morris is expected to miss several games with a sprained MCL. He had that same injury last year when Max Duggan came in and took over the starting job, and obviously TCU went on the Cinderella run that they did, if you want to call it that. It took him about a month to recover from that injury. So, as we mentioned earlier, redshirt freshman Josh Hoover takes over at quarterback. He goes 37 of 58 for 439 yards, 4 touchdowns, did throw 2 interceptions as well. So it's a great first start for Hoover, but he has thrown an interception in every game that he's appeared in thus far with the Horned Frogs. So we'll see how he continues to play. This could be a situation where, just like last year, Chandler Morris goes down with an injury, and TCU finds a better quarterback because of it. Not saying that Chandler Morris isn't a good quarterback, but if Josh Hoover continues to play at a high level and puts up 44 points on offense, Vic, he could be the guy for the Horned Frogs the rest of the year, even when Morris comes back to health. So we'll keep an eye on that one. Obviously, going to need to see some more from Josh Hoover. Defensively for TCU, it's essentially a new look there as well. Started off shaky, allowing 45 points to Colorado in week 1, but they've looked much better since then. The 27 points to Iowa State was the most they've given up since that week 1 loss, and obviously a strong performance against BYU. Holding the Cougars to just 11 points. They forced 7 punts, 2 turnovers on downs, an interception, and a fumble, so they covered all the bases there, and they will play Kansas State next. After that, the Longhorns go to Iowa State. Matt Campbell's team 4-3 overall, 3-1 in conference play. Losses have come to their rival Iowa, Oklahoma, and Ohio University. Not Ohio State, Ohio University. You heard that right. So they will play Cincinnati on Saturday. The loss to they played Cincinnati on Saturday. The loss to Ohio looks bad, and it should look that way, but they've really improved over the last few weeks. They continue to just win games, which is what Matt Campbell has found a way to do despite everything going on around that program with the gambling issues and things like that. So 3-1 in Big 12 play through 4 weeks of competition is not a bad spot to be in whatsoever. They'll have to finish strong with Kansas coming into town in 2 weeks. Then they travel to play BYU and obviously, of course, playing Texas in Ames. The Cyclone defense, though, has really been what comes off the screen at you. They have forced 6 interceptions in the last 2 games. They picked off a struggling Emory Jones twice against Cincinnati on Saturday and TCU 4 times the week prior. So this continues to be a team that opposing offenses will have issues throwing the ball against. Texas has had their fair share of issues throwing against that 3-high safety defense. So we'll see how that comes into play when the Longhorns travel to Ames, where they have struggled as of late. They've lost 3 out of the last 4. Cyclones hit the bye week this week, and they will play Baylor the week after that. And last but certainly not least, Longhorns end the season on their home turf against Texas Tech, who are 3-4 overall, 2-2 in conference play. Expected the Red Raiders to have played much better than they have so far this year. They lost to Wyoming in week 1 in an overtime thriller, which was eye-jarring. And then they lost to Oregon the next week, which you could expect, and West Virginia in their first Big 12 game. So that said, they continue to have no luck when it comes to their quarterbacks staying healthy. That has been the thorn in Joey McGuire's side so far during his tenure. They lost Tyler Shuck, the starting quarterback, who could potentially be out for the season, the rest of the regular season, rather. Baron Morton goes down in the Kansas State game, and it's unsure how long he's going to be out. So they lean on true freshman Jake Strong to take over the offense. On his first drive in the third quarter, he goes 99 yards down the field and scores a touchdown. But after that, it was all downhill. 3 interceptions through the rest of the night for Strong. Texas Tech's defense has been just a bit of a roller coaster, I think is the best way to put it so far this year. And they show that on Saturday. They're going to have to tighten up if they want to try and make a bounce back and try to win some more games in the Big 12 Conference. I think they really just hope they can get Baron Morton back sometime soon, or they see big jumps from Jake Strong. Maybe a full week of practice helps his game out, but otherwise they might be in for a tough finish to the season. And so that's your outlook on how the remaining teams on the schedule for Texas have been playing so far in Big 12 competition. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Horns 24/7 YouTube channel. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel plus turn on notifications so you're the first to know when new content heads your way. For the rest of the crew, I'm Tommy Yarrish. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.